David had faced countless challenges in his career, but nothing prepared him for the shock that awaited him that morning. The entire company gathered in the grand conference hall, whispers filling the air as the board of directors prepared to announce the new CEO. David sat near the front, confident he would be working under a seasoned executive brought in from one of the industry's powerhouses. Instead, the name that echoed through the microphone left him frozen in disbelief: Victoria Vance. Applause erupted across the room, yet to David, every sound faded into a dull silence. Victoria, the woman he had loved a decade ago, the one who had vanished from his life without explanation, was now standing gracefully on the stage. Her poise, her calm authority, and the quiet confidence in her eyes all testified that she was no longer the college girl he once held in his arms. She was now the new leader of the empire he had worked so hard to serve. Memories came flooding back uninvited: late-night study sessions, stolen kisses between lectures, promises whispered under starlight. He had thought those days were buried in the past. But now, the past was staring him in the eye, elevated, powerful, and impossibly untouchable. As the clapping subsided, Victoria's voice rang out, steady and warm. She spoke of innovation, growth, and unity, her tone commanding the full attention of the audience. Then, without hesitation, she made her first executive decision, promoting David to a higher managerial position. The room buzzed with surprise, colleagues stealing glances at him with a mixture of envy and curiosity. David, however, could barely process the words. His heart pounded, not from ambition fulfilled, but from confusion and unresolved emotions. Why would she, of all people, choose to lift him up the very moment she re-entered his life? For the first time in years, David felt the ground beneath him shift. The professional battlefield he thought he understood had just transformed into something far more personal, and far more dangerous. The moment Victoria's name was announced, memories David had long buried clawed their way back to the surface. To everyone else in the room, she was the brilliant new CEO. But to him, she was also the girl who once made his world feel infinite. Back in college, David and Victoria had been inseparable. They were the couple everyone admired, the ambitious young man with sharp determination and the graceful girl with dreams too big for the small town they came from. Their days had been filled with laughter, long walks across campus, and plans for a future together. For a time, he truly believed nothing could tear them apart, but everything changed during his final year. One evening, he had gone to see her after a long day of classes, only to find her in the courtyard with another man. They were sitting close, her eyes red from tears, his hand resting on her shoulder. To David, it looked intimate, undeniable. Rage and betrayal consumed him before he could ask for an explanation. He ended it that night, abruptly, cruelly. His words had been cold, cutting her deeper than he realized. "I don't share what's mine." He never gave her the chance to explain. What he didn't know, what he refused to listen to, was that the man was her cousin, the only family member who had rushed to her side after her grandfather's passing. Victoria had been grieving, not unfaithful. By the time David discovered the truth months later, it was too late. She was gone, leaving only silence where their laughter used to be. He heard from mutual friends that she had accepted a job overseas, building her career with a relentless focus that left no room for the past, and so, for years, David carried the weight of his mistake. The bitterness had long faded, replaced with regret and questions that never found answers. He had imagined countless scenarios of meeting her again, but none of them compared to reality. Now, here she was, no longer the girl he once loved, but the woman who held the power to shape his future, and he couldn't tell if fate was offering him redemption or punishment. The first private meeting between David and Victoria came sooner than he expected. An assistant escorted him into the CEO's office, a sleek, glass-walled space perched high above the city. The skyline stretched endlessly beyond, but David's focus narrowed to the woman standing by the window. Victoria turned slowly, her heels clicking against the polished floor. It had been 10 years, yet she looked even more breathtaking than memory allowed. Gone was the shy, bookish girl who once clung to his arm. In her place stood a woman radiating confidence, her tailored suit emphasizing both elegance and authority. Her eyes, sharp yet unreadable, met his with a calm intensity that sent his pulse racing. "David," she greeted, her tone polite, almost formal, as though they were strangers bound only by business. "Congratulations on your promotion. I expect you to live up to it." He cleared his throat, trying to steady himself. "Thank you, Miss Vance." The words felt foreign on his tongue. Once, he had whispered her name in tenderness. Now, he spoke it with the distance of professionalism, though his heart betrayed him with every beat. For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy with everything unsaid. David wanted to ask 1,000 questions, about her life abroad, about why she never wrote back, about whether she still hated him for walking away. But her composed demeanor offered no entry point. She was no longer the girl who had once depended on him, she was the woman who commanded the room. "I trust the past won't interfere with our work," Victoria said smoothly, crossing her arms. Her words were direct, but her eyes flickered, betraying the faintest trace of something else, pain, perhaps, or curiosity. David straightened, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "Of course not," he replied, though inside, turmoil raged. The truth was that he still cared, perhaps more than ever. Seeing her again had unraveled the careful walls he built over the years. As she returned to her desk, dismissing him with a subtle nod, David realized the real challenge ahead was not the corporate battles that awaited, but the unspoken war rekindled between his heart and hers. The following afternoon, David received an unexpected message from Leo Thompson, the company's long-standing vice president and his former mentor. Leo had guided him since his early career, offering advice with a mixture of sharp wit and paternal care. When Leo invited him to lunch at an upscale restaurant near the financial district, David agreed without hesitation. Over the clinking of silverware and hushed conversations, Leo raised his glass with a wry smile. "David, you've grown into quite the asset. I always knew you'd rise quickly." "Thanks to you," David replied sincerely. He owed much of his professional discipline to this man, but the warmth in Leo's eyes soon dimmed, replaced by something heavier. "You've heard about Victoria, of course. The board chose her." David nodded, unsure how to respond. Leo leaned back, sighing. "That seat was promised to me, David. 10 years of service, building this company from the ground up, and yet, when the moment came, they handed it to someone who had been abroad for most of it." His voice carried bitterness, though he masked it with a calm smile. David frowned. "I'm sorry, Leo. I know how much it meant to you." "That's business," Leo said dryly. Then he reached into his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. "But I didn't ask you here for sympathy." Inside the folder lay a lucrative offer, one stamped with the name Sterling Corporation, their fiercest competitor. Numbers glimmered on the page: salary, bonuses, stock options. It was the kind of contract that could change David's life. "You'd have your own division, your own team, and no glass ceiling holding you back," Leo said smoothly. "At Sterling, talent is rewarded. Unlike here, where politics decide the future." David's chest tightened. He respected Leo deeply, but the offer carried dangerous weight. Accepting would mean betraying the company he had devoted years to, and, inevitably, crossing paths with Victoria as a rival. Leo studied him carefully. "Think about it, David. Loyalty is admirable, but it doesn't pay the price of ambition." As David closed the folder, he realized this was more than an opportunity. It was a fork in the road, one that would test not only his career, but the fragile, tangled connection he had just rediscovered with Victoria. 2 days after his uneasy lunch with Leo, David was summoned to Victoria's office. The message was brief, formal even, but something in the tone made his pulse quicken. When he entered, Victoria was standing by the window, a stack of files neatly arranged on her desk. "Close the door, David," she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. He obeyed, suddenly aware of the tension in the room. Without preamble, she slid a folder toward him. "I think you should see this." Inside were resignation letters, half a dozen of them, all from senior managers who had been with the company for years. At the top of the pile sat Leo Thompson's. David's eyes widened. "They all resigned, together?" Victoria nodded. "And not by coincidence. Leo didn't just lose a promotion, he's been preparing his exit for months. Sterling's offer to you was just a small part of a much larger move." She opened another file. This one contained spreadsheets, email printouts, and transaction records. The evidence was damning: kickbacks, embezzled funds, covert deals with suppliers. The neat mentor David once admired was at the center of a rot that had been festering for years. David felt his chest tighten. Leo. He always preached integrity. He taught you what he wanted you to believe," Victoria cut in gently, but firmly. "People like him survive by wearing masks. And now, his mask has slipped." She studied him for a long moment, then added quietly, "I didn't plan to show you this so soon, but you needed to understand the battlefield you're standing on." David looked up, confusion flickering across his face. "Why me? Why tell me all this?" Victoria hesitated, then drew a deep breath. Her next words fell with the weight of a thunderclap, "Because I'm not just the CEO the board voted in. I'm Victoria Vance, daughter of Theodore Vance, the man who built this company. This fight isn't just about business, David. It's about protecting my father's legacy from those who would destroy it." The revelation struck him harder than any offer Leo could have made. For a moment, all he could do was stare at her, the woman he once loved, now standing as both ally and enigma, holding truths powerful enough to change everything. The turbulence at work was already consuming David's every thought, but at home, another storm awaited him. His mother, a woman of sharp eyes and stronger will, had been relentless in her mission, finding her only son a suitable wife. "David, you're 32, she reminded him for the 100th time over dinner, her chopsticks clicking against the bowl for emphasis. "You can't spend your whole life buried in contracts and late-night meetings. A man needs stability, a family." David sighed, pressing his temples. "Mom, this isn't the right time. The company will always have problems," she cut him off with practiced authority. "But your youth? That doesn't wait." He knew arguing further would be pointless. His mother's persistence was legendary, and tonight she had a trump card ready. "I've already arranged it. Tomorrow evening. A lovely girl from a good family. Polite, well-educated, kind. You'll like her." Against his better judgment, David gave a reluctant nod. One dinner, he told himself. One meaningless evening to placate her. The next night, he found himself in an upscale restaurant, sitting across from Emma Collins, a poised woman with warm hazel eyes and a polite smile. She spoke gently, asking about his work, his interests, his travels. By all accounts, she was charming, yet David's mind drifted elsewhere. As Emma laughed softly at one of his half-hearted anecdotes, he couldn't help but picture Victoria's confident gaze, the way her voice carried both authority and hidden emotion. Compared to that fiery presence, this dinner felt muted, like a conversation behind glass. Emma noticed his distraction. "Busy day at work?" she asked, tilting her head with concern. David forced a smile. "You could say that." He tried to focus, to give the evening a fair chance. But each time Emma leaned forward, his heart stubbornly conjured Victoria's face instead. The sharp contrast gnawed at him, one woman his mother would wholeheartedly approve of, the other the same woman who had broken his heart years ago, and just revealed secrets that could change his future forever. By the time dessert arrived, David knew the truth. No matter how suitable Emma might be, no one could replace the place Victoria still occupied in his heart. Just a week after the awkward dinner with Emma, David's mother struck again. This time, however, she seemed genuinely excited. "David, trust me," she said, adjusting his tie before he could protest. "Chloe Quinn is different. She's not only beautiful but also successful in her own right. You'll have things in common." David gave a resigned nod and headed to the meeting place, a chic rooftop cafe overlooking the city skyline. When Chloe arrived, she lit up the room with effortless charm. Tall and graceful, dressed in a flowing pastel dress of her own design, she carried herself with the confidence of a woman who knew exactly who she was. "David Harper," she said with a bright smile, extending her hand. "I've heard a lot about you. Hopefully all good things." Her warmth was disarming. Unlike the stiff formality of his previous blind date, Chloe made conversation easy. She talked about her design studio, her passion for creating clothes that made women feel powerful, and her struggles to balance artistry with the ruthless demands of the fashion industry. David found himself listening more than speaking, drawn in by her energy. When the waiter brought their drinks, Chloe leaned forward playfully. "Look, I'm not here to rush into anything. How about we just start as friends? No pressure, no expectations." David blinked, surprised by her straightforwardness. He felt a small weight lift from his shoulders. "Friends," he echoed, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "That sounds good." Over the next few weeks, they met occasionally for coffee or lunch. Chloe was quick-witted, easy to laugh, and refreshingly honest. With her, David could let down his guard, if only a little. She never pressed for more, never made him feel trapped, and yet, no matter how much he appreciated Chloe's company, his thoughts always circled back to Victoria. Her commanding presence at the office, the unspoken tension between them, the ghosts of their past, those things weighed on him in ways Chloe never could point. One evening, as Chloe showed him sketches for her upcoming collection, David smiled genuinely for the first time in weeks. Still, deep down, he knew the truth. Chloe was becoming a friend, perhaps even an ally, but she could never eclipse the woman who still haunted his heart. It was a late Friday evening when David, worn out from another tense week at the office, wandered into a small diner tucked away on a quiet street. The neon sign flickered just as it had 10 years ago. He froze at the doorway. This was their place. The diner where he and Victoria had spent countless nights in college, sharing milkshakes and fries, laughing until the staff had to kick them out, and there she was. Victoria sat by the window, the soft glow of the streetlight framing her profile. She was dressed simply in a cream blouse and dark jeans, yet she looked as striking as ever. A cup of black coffee rested in front of her, untouched. For a moment, David considered leaving before she noticed. But then her eyes lifted, locking onto his. "David." Her voice was calm, almost too calm, as if she had rehearsed this moment. "Victoria," he replied, his throat tight. After a beat of silence, she gestured to the empty seat across from her. He slid into it, the familiar vinyl squeaking under his weight. The waitress, recognizing him, smiled knowingly. Without asking, she placed 2 orders of their old favorite, cheeseburgers with extra pickles and a shared strawberry milkshake. The nostalgia was suffocating. David tried to smile. "It feels like nothing has changed." Victoria's lips curved faintly, but her eyes betrayed no warmth. "Everything has changed, David. We're not those people anymore." They ate slowly, the familiar flavor stirring memories neither dared to voice. At one point, their hands brushed as they reached for the milkshake straw, and a jolt of the past surged through him. He wanted to tell her how much he still cared, how much he regretted the years lost. But before he could, she spoke again, her tone firm. "David, whatever history we shared, it's over. We both have our own paths now." The words cut deeper than he expected. He forced himself to nod, masking the ache in his chest. "If that's what you want." Victoria looked away, her expression unreadable. Outside, the rain began to fall, blurring the city lights. They finished the meal in silence, two strangers bound by memories too heavy to carry, yet too precious to forget. The news broke early on a rainy Monday morning. More than 30 customers had been rushed to the hospital after dining at one of the company's newly launched restaurants in Indianapolis. The headlines were brutal: "Food poisoning scandal rocks Vance Hospitality Group." By the time David arrived at the office, the atmosphere was suffocating. Phones rang nonstop, reporters crowded the lobby, and employees whispered anxiously in the hallways. Victoria was already in the boardroom, her expression sharp and composed despite the chaos. "We need immediate action," she declared, sliding the preliminary incident reports across the table. "If we don't contain this, our reputation could collapse overnight." David scanned the files quickly, his mind racing. First, shut down the Indianapolis branch until further notice. "We'll cover all medical expenses for the affected customers, every single one. That buys us goodwill and keeps the lawsuits at bay." Then we need a transparent press statement. No excuses, no cover-ups. The directors exchanged uneasy glances, but Victoria nodded firmly. "Agreed." She looked at him directly, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "You'll lead the operational response. I'll handle the press conference. We leave for Indianapolis in 2 hours." The private jet ride was tense, filled with rapid-fire phone calls and draft press releases. David outlined contingency plans, from recalling shipments of suspect ingredients to coordinating with local health authorities. Despite the pressure, he found himself oddly focused, the adrenaline sharpening every thought. When they landed, the scene was chaotic. News vans crowded the restaurant parking lot. Hospital representatives were demanding answers. Victoria, stepping into the storm of microphones, spoke with calm authority. "We at Vance Hospitality take full responsibility. Our priority is the health of our guests, and we will spare no effort in ensuring their safety." Her words carried weight, silencing the frenzy for a moment. Meanwhile, David worked behind the scenes, inspecting the kitchen, interrogating suppliers, and cross-checking shipment records. He discovered discrepancies in the invoices, suggesting that cheaper, lower-quality produce might have been swapped in by a third-party vendor. His jaw tightened. Someone inside had either been careless, or deliberately sabotaging them. As night fell, Victoria joined him in the dimly lit kitchen, her shoulders tense. "This isn't just negligence," David said quietly. "It feels like a setup." She met his eyes, the air heavy between them. "Then we'll find out who's behind it, together." The toxicology report landed on David's desk just after midnight. The fluorescent lights of the Indianapolis office buzzed faintly as he tore open the sealed envelope. His eyes scanned the first lines, and his stomach dropped. Arsenic. The patients weren't just suffering from spoiled food, they had been deliberately poisoned. "Victoria," he whispered, striding into the adjoining room where she was poring over supplier contracts. He laid the report in front of her. Her eyes widened, then narrowed with fury. "This isn't contamination," she said, her voice trembling with controlled anger. "It's sabotage." Before David could respond, Victoria suddenly winced, one hand clutching her abdomen. The color drained from her face. He rushed to her side, alarmed. "Victoria? What's wrong?" It's my old condition, she managed through clenched teeth. Stomach spasms. I forgot my medication in New York. Her breath came shallow, her body trembling. Panic threatened to overwhelm him, but instinct took over. He remembered the nights back in college, when she suffered similar episodes after exhausting herself during exams. He had once learned how to ease the pain through careful massage techniques, gentle pressure along her abdomen to calm the spasms. Lie down, he urged softly, guiding her to the couch in the corner of the room. She resisted for a second, pride flashing in her eyes, but the pain was too much. Finally, she surrendered, curling on her side as he knelt beside her, his hands, steady despite his racing heart, moved with practiced familiarity, pressing against the tense muscles in rhythmic motions. "Breathe with me, slowly," he whispered. She followed his voice, her breath gradually evening out. The sharp lines of pain on her face began to soften. After several minutes, the worst of the spasm subsided. Her eyes fluttered open, glistening with unshed tears. "You still remember," she murmured, her voice barely audible. David offered a faint smile, though his chest ached. "Some things you don't forget." For a long moment, the chaos outside seemed to fade. It was just the two of them, caught between the past and the storm of the present. But then Victoria straightened, regaining her composure, though her voice was hushed. "If arsenic is involved, David, this goes far beyond business rivalries." He nodded grimly, tightening his fist around the report. "Then we're not just fighting for the company anymore. We're fighting for lives." The hospital corridor smelled faintly of antiseptic, its sterile silence broken only by the occasional beep of monitors. David paced restlessly outside Victoria's room, his thoughts tangled between the arsenic crisis and her sudden relapse. He had just turned toward the vending machine when a familiar voice called his name. "David?" He spun around. Chloe Quinn, dressed in a chic cream trench coat, approached with a worried expression. He blinked, startled. "Chloe? What are you doing here?" "I heard about the poisoning victims," she said quickly, then lowered her voice. "But I'm actually here for Victoria." David froze. "You know her?" Chloe's lips curved into a bittersweet smile. "She was my closest friend when we studied abroad in Paris. We shared everything, dreams, heartbreaks, even secrets." He felt the ground shift beneath him. Chloe exhaled, her eyes softening with sympathy. "David, there's something you never knew. Back then, Victoria didn't leave you because she stopped loving you. She was forced." His chest tightened. "Forced? By whom?" "By her own family, and yours," Chloe replied gently. "Your mother and her father struck a deal. If Victoria walked away, her father would secure the connections that helped you climb. The scholarships, the introductions, even your early investors, they didn't fall from the sky. They came because Victoria sacrificed her happiness." David's breath caught, his mind flashing back to the inexplicable doors that had opened for him, the sudden opportunities that had seemed like fate. He had always thought it was luck, or his own determination. Now, the truth cut deeper than any betrayal. "She chose your future over her own heart," Chloe whispered. "She bore the blame so you could shine without guilt. And she never told you, because she wanted your success to feel real." David staggered back a step, his vision blurring. Pain swelled in his chest, heavier than any corporate battle. His voice cracked. "All these years, I hated her for abandoning me. And all this time, she was saving me." Chloe touched his arm gently. "If you still love her, don't waste another moment in anger. She's carried this burden alone for too long." David looked toward Victoria's room, his heart pounding with grief and newfound clarity. For the first time, he realized his empire wasn't built on ambition alone, it was built on her silent sacrifice. And he silently vowed he would never let her bear it alone again. The morning light streamed softly through the hospital blinds, casting pale golden stripes across the white sheets. Victoria stirred, eyelids fluttering open. For a brief moment, she seemed disoriented, until her gaze fell upon David seated at her bedside, his head bowed slightly, exhaustion etched on his face. Her heart skipped, and she quickly turned her head away. "Why are you still here?" she murmured, voice hoarse. David straightened, his eyes filled with a mixture of relief and sorrow. "Because you scared the hell out of me," he replied gently. "I'm not leaving you again, Victoria." She bit her lip, a flush rising on her cheeks. Don't say things like that. We've both moved on. You have your career, your life. And he reached out, carefully brushing a strand of hair from her face. The tenderness in his touch made her chest ache. "No," he interrupted softly. "I know the truth now. Chloe told me everything. About the deal. About the sacrifice you made." Her eyes widened, then quickly clouded with shame. "So she told you," her voice trembled. "I never wanted you to know. I wanted your success to be yours, not shadowed by my choice." David shook his head, gripping her hand firmly. "My success means nothing if it cost me you. All these years, I thought you abandoned me. But you gave up everything for me. I won't let you carry that burden anymore." Tears welled in her eyes, slipping down her cheeks despite her attempts to hide them. David, leaning closer, his voice dropped to a whisper. 10 years, Victoria. 10 years of regret, anger, and longing. I don't care about the past anymore. I only care about this moment." Her resistance melted under his gaze. Slowly, almost hesitantly, she lifted her face toward his. Their lips met, tentative at first, then deepening into a kiss that spoke of lost years and rekindled love. It was raw, aching, and yet so profoundly right that a quiet gasp came from the doorway. Chloe stood there, wide-eyed, but then a smile softened her expression. She placed a finger to her lips and whispered, "Finally," before quietly stepping away, leaving them in their fragile, long-awaited embrace. For the first time in a decade, the distance between David and Victoria dissolved, not in words, but in the certainty of a love that had endured every storm. The boardroom was filled with tension, the air thick with unease. Reports of the food poisoning scandal were spread across the long table, every page a reminder of the crisis consuming the company. At the head of the room, Theodore Vance's portrait seemed to stare down at them, silent and judging. Victoria sat beside David, her face pale and weakened from her recent illness. Though she tried to hide it, every movement revealed the strain she was under. When the board members pressed for answers, her voice faltered, and a hush fell across the room. Before anyone could question further, David rose from his seat. His tone was steady, firm. "From this moment, I will serve as acting vice president. Until Victoria regains her strength, I will take full responsibility for addressing the crisis and ensuring stability." Murmurs rippled through the board, some skeptical, others relieved. One older executive leaned forward. "Mr. Knight, you've proven yourself capable in operations, but this scandal isn't just logistics, it's reputation, politics, survival." David met his gaze without flinching. "I understand. That's why I won't let this company fall, not while so many livelihoods depend on it. And not while the Vance family's legacy is at stake." His words carried both conviction and something deeper, a vow that stretched beyond business. Victoria looked at him, eyes wide with both gratitude and worry. She opened her mouth to object, but he gently placed his hand over hers beneath the table, giving a subtle squeeze. It was a silent reassurance. "Trust me." After a tense pause, the chairman of the board finally nodded. Very well. The motion is approved. Mr. Knight, you will act as Vice President effective immediately. Handle the crisis swiftly, or we may not have a company left to save. As the meeting adjourned, David helped Victoria to her feet. She whispered, her voice trembling, "You don't have to do this, not for me." He leaned close, his eyes burning with determination. "I'm doing it for all of us. For the company, for the people who trust us, and for you. I won't let anyone take away what we've built, not again." For the first time, David wasn't just fighting for success. He was fighting to protect the woman he loved and the empire she had been forced to sacrifice for. And he swore to himself, this time, he would not fail.